A psychic is manipulating and using subjective energy of the non-physical nature, in order to achieve a non-effect. Mentalists, magicians, these types of folks, they manipulate perception by distraction and some trickery in order to receive a desired effect or result.
But that's a real long jump from being a gifted psychic.
I'm not saying it's rubbish. I'm just saying I've never seen it. I'd be very happy to believe it if someone presented me with proof.
I wouldn't equate Patrick Jane's mental ability with psychic ability. It's not a paranormal function.
When it comes to believers and skeptics, sheeps and goats, basically, you know, there's an old saying, for believers, no proof is necessary, and for skeptics, no proof is possible.
I've never met a real psychic. It truly does not exist. There are ways scientifically to basically explain any bit of anything that can be considered to be quote-unquote psychic phenomenon.
I'm a scientist. I was trained in how you do the scientific method. You do experiments, you replicate your experiments, you replicate your data, but this phenomena doesn't work like a machine.
When I meet someone who professes to be a psychic or professes to have some kind of paranormal ability, my simple response inwardly oftentimes is prove it.
But I tend to disbelieve a lot of what I hear because a substantial portion of what people learn about in this field is garbage. I'd say, 98% of it? Throw it out, forget it. It's absolutely worthless. You get to the core of this, to the real researchers, to the real people, to the real data, it's extraordinary. But one thing we do know, if these things never occurred, we wouldn't be here discussing it. If they occurred all the time and we could control them, we wouldn't be here discussing it. So that means there's an aspect of the world we live in we know a little bit about.
And we have to ask ourselves, is it nature versus nurture? Is someone born in this environment that's accepting of it, so then it's cultivated naturally? Or is it a genetic component? I think there might be a little bit of both.
The best analogy to me is we can all drive cars. Maybe not as well as others, but we can all drive. How many of us have the stamina, the endurance, the hand-eye-foot coordination, the reflexes to become a race driver?
And psychic information is not logical, it's not rational, it's not linear, it's just an obtuse perception of information.
The research I did at UCLA, the lab work, part of it developed into a training program to see if we could take normal, healthy, emotionally stable people who haven't had any experiences to their knowledge and train it in them.
And going into that world and discerning information and making it objective, verifiable, and factual.
We had thousands of people come through the program. Most had no results at all. But there was a real small percentage on the far end of the spectrum who were like athletes. They were stars. What that means, why it is, God only knows. It may be we're physiologically or neurologically different. We're wired different.
And the nature of my ability is pretty simple. I'm primarily visual. I get information, what's called clairvoyance. Information comes in a very holistic fashion that resembles hearing, seeing, all these things, but it's all internal versus external.
I know for myself and a few other people I've worked with, we're very sensitive to changes in the Earth's magnetic field, dramatically so.
I'm not actually using my eyes or using my ears or using my, any of these, or hands. This feeling is not something that's tangible. It's more of a sensation that I have to interpret.
The people who were most adept at this, who responded the most quickly, were the most emotionally unstable.
Did you put a spell on Cody Elkins?
I did. I put a killing spell on him. I've done the spell several times before, but this is the first time it's worked.
Here's a caveat. When you open the door, so to speak, you can't really close it. Once you make yourself aware to this new aspect of yourself, this new way of receiving information, you will never be the same.
Allison!
An example, which is a little more disturbing. 1975. I'm dreaming that I'm flying a 747. It was a TWA, and I've been a pilot for years, so I know a little bit about aircraft. And in the dream, we're on approach to South Africa. And suddenly the turbofans cut out. The drone goes away. We're dropping like a stone. The instruments are dark. We hit. I fly to bed, covered in perspiration. And I remembered, my God, a 747's never gone down. So I didn't know what day it was going to happen, what time it was going to happen, what flight number. So I could have called TWA, could have called the FAA. I can't do it because I don't know anything. 3 days later, the first 747 went down on approach to South Africa. It was the TWA. If you did that today, the FBI would be at your door in probably 20 minutes.
I'm a former supervisory special agent of the FBI for 27 years. My main emphasis while I was with the FBI was the violent crime program, which entailed all of kidnappings throughout the Southern California area.
Typically, I get involved with law enforcement issues in what's called an unofficial capacity. I'm not able really to comment on some of the official relationships I have. And all those official relationships are unofficial.
I think that the relationship between psychics and law enforcement is somewhat kind of kept in the back, so to speak. Law enforcement, they want to do their job. They want to go out there and investigate it, find the person who did it, make the arrest.
I'm not reaching here to say that the preconception about a lot of psychics is that they're nuts.
I make and sell Wicca healing powders on the internet. You should check out my website.
Nobody in law enforcement that I know of that goes to the psychic first up.
The police asked me to try and get a psychic fix on him to see if I could get a sense of who this man is.
That's probably the last person they're going to go to.
We are tools. Psychics don't solve crimes.
They're not stable.
Cody deserved to die. He was a bad person. He stole and tortured and killed my cat.
And maybe that's what gives some of them the ability to do this when they want.
You would use one when all of your other avenues have been exhausted. Once and if you don't have anything else, why not?
I've never read a case or seen a show where they actually did make anything other than the broadest possible connections to the realities of the case.
Because when we open up psychically, it's a doorway that everything can come through. So you'll get things that are pertinent to the case and things that are maybe not so pertinent.
It's a technique of generalizing and a technique of never quite being able to pin down what it is they're saying so that eventually they're going to hit the right mark.
Yes, I'm feeling that Paul hasn't been 100% honest with you. He hasn't been happy.
I have yet to meet one that I think in any way is doing anything other than guessing and occasionally getting it right. The blind squirrel eventually gets the nuts.
During my career in the FBI, I did have occasion to work with different psychics. Kidnappings tend to lend themselves more to that field than probably any other investigation, with the exception of maybe homicides.
They'd give us things to hold relevant to the crime. Clothing, artifacts, a wallet, a piece of jewelry.
That's called psychometry. It's a very powerful tool in discerning information because every living thing has an atmosphere.
You start describing details about the person, like their families, their friends, mental problems, physical illnesses. A mentalist can't do that, but a psychic can.
So let's say that, a murderer drops the weapon, or a victim leaves a shoe or a blood-stained piece of jewelry, and the psychic can use that.
For me, the more graphic something was, the more easily I was able to see it. I haven't done this kind of work in a while because it's very depressing. You see these horrible images in your head, and if you're very sensitive to this, emotionally, it's best to